Hi, this is Mac from Mac's List. Before we start the show, I want to let you know about my new book, Land Your Dream Job Anywhere. I've been helping job seekers find meaningful, well-paying work since 2001, and now I put all my best advice into one easy-to-use guide. My book shows you how to make your resume stand out in a stack of applications, where you can find the hidden jobs that never get posted, and what you need to do to ace your next job interview. Get the first chapter now for free. Visit maxlist.org/anywhere. This is Find Your Dream Job, the podcast that helps you get hired, have the career you want, and make a difference in life. I'm Mac Pritchard, your host and publisher of Mac's List. I'm joined by my co-host, Ben Forstag, and our guest co-host this week, Kristen Schumann. Jessica Black is out of town. This week, we're talking about how to manage job search stress. Looking for a job is hard work. It can also bring stress that can harm your health and your relationships. Our guest expert this week is Alison Cardy. She says you can reduce your job search stress, and when you do so, you make yourself a better candidate and you get your next job faster. Alison and I talk later in the show. Laughter offers one surefire way to relax. Ben Forstag has found a list of 27 crazy responses to job interview questions that will make you chuckle. He shares it with us in a moment. You see a posting for a job you'd love to do. There's just one catch. You're overqualified. How do you explain to the employer you will be happy in a position that pays less and requires fewer skills than your last gig? That's our question of the week. It comes from Stephen in Portland. Kristen Schumann offers her advice. Well, I want to welcome career coach Kristen Schumann back to the Mac's List studio once more as our guest co-host. Kristen, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. For our listeners, you may recall Kristen joined us the week before last, and it's always a treat to have her here in the Mac's List studio. You can learn more about her and her work by visiting her website, portlandcareer.com. So, Kristen, thanks for joining us and filling in for Jessica. This week, we're talking about managing stress during a job search. And I'm curious, Kristen, Ben, what have you two done to manage stress when you've been out of work? Or Kristen, what advice do you give your clients?
When I've been out of work, I've always liked going to the movies, but I don't always give that advice. I like to tell people to take that time to explore, what their next move might be, and to approach it kind of like a road trip, right? That I hate to drive, but I love road trips, right? So let your mind kind of be expansive and appreciate this time, and maybe go to places in town that you don't normally get to go, right? Like the Chinese garden.
So what I'm hearing is you don't have to spend every waking moment thinking about your search or sending out resumes or doing coffees or informational interviews.
Right. Those are the brass tacks, and you definitely should do those things. But, yeah, sorry.
No, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I think it's a good thing that you're telling people to take some time for themselves.
Yeah, the things that people don't think to do, I guess.
Yeah. How about you, Ben?
So when I was last unemployed, I swapped out my traditional 9-to-5 job with a possibly more stressful job of watching my 1-year-old son. I became his primary daycare provider while my wife went to work. So I did that. I think I've also shared on the podcast that I took on some new home improvement projects, which was fun and took my mind off things. The big one for me was also I just had all the time in the world at that point, so I started running again, which made me feel better physically, and I think it also created some space in my head to think more clearly when I was spending time applying to jobs, going on informational interviews, and so forth. Those 30 to 60 minutes of running just kind of creates focus for me, which helped a lot.
Yeah, I found two things really helped me manage stress during my 2 periods of unemployment. One was just being with other people, and I found a great way to connect with people was by volunteering and doing work in my field. Both cases I'm thinking of, I worked on political campaigns, but whatever your interest, just for me, getting out of the house helped me avoid isolation, which I think can happen to a lot of job seekers. And the second was taking really long walks with our dogs. And the last time I was unemployed, we actually got a puppy. So that dog needed a lot of exercise. And I spent almost every day, about an hour and a half, walking both the puppy and another dog we had at the time. And I think moving like that and getting out and about and seeing people is always good. Well, terrific. We'll hear more about job search stress management later in the show when I speak with Alison. But let's turn to you in the meantime, Ben, because you're out there every week searching the nooks and crannies of the internet, and you're looking for websites, tools, books, and other resources our listeners can use in a job search or in their careers. So what have you found for us this week?
So you started off the show by saying that a job search was stressful. I'm going to use a more colloquial term and say being unemployed sucks.
Yeah.
And
I like those good short one-syllable words.
That's right. And, it's, as you pointed out, it's very isolating and upsetting, and everyone knows the reasons for that. So I thought we would lighten things up a little bit today, and I wanted to share a webpage I found. This comes from thoughtcatalog.com, and it's the 27 most ridiculous things people have said at a job interview and still got the job. Now, you can go find a lot of horror stories from interviews, often from the perspective of the hiring manager, where they say, I can't believe a candidate came in and started stripping or whatever, things like that, horror stories.
I haven't heard that one yet.
But, I wanted to find something a little bit more upbeat about kind of humorous approaches to interviews that actually ended up being helpful to the candidate. And so these are stories that people submitted. I don't know, frankly, if they're 100% true, but the website claims that they are. If you just want a little laugh and about people who creatively responded to some questions from an employer, definitely worth checking out. It might improve your job search day a little bit. There's two specifically that I wanted to share with you.
Only two you could pick out from the 27.
Yeah, I had to weed out the one about the person who stripped when they showed up.
Darn.
That's not one of them. So the first one, this is just a short quote someone shared. They said, I was asked by an employer if I could pass a drug test. I politely responded that I needed 2 weeks to study. I was hired on the spot.
Any idea what state that was in?
I don't. Might be Portland, might be Oregon. I don't know.
Could be Colorado, California.
Here's another one that I think a lot of people could empathize with. The interviewer asked, what is your weakness? And the interviewee said, surviving job interviews. And then they fleshed this out a little bit by saying, this answer has never failed me in getting a job offer. Some people think that the answer is humorous, others honest. But if you can confess and explain why you are horrible in first impressions, then you have leverage no matter what else you say in the interview. And I think that was clever and true. So there's some other ones that are definitely will get more guffaws than I got from the audience here in the room today. There you go. But if you want to check this out, it's again on thoughtcatalog.com, and I will have the URL in the show notes.
Well, thanks, Ben. Hearing you share those stories, I'm just reminded of the class cut up that we all had in grade school. Somebody who always had the zinger line, and apparently that's a skill that can serve you well during a job search later in life, too.
Humor definitely is a winning approach sometimes in an interview.
Okay. Well, if you have a suggestion for Ben, please write him, and we may share your idea on the show. Ben's email address is easy to remember. It's ben@maxlist.org. Now let's turn to you, our listeners. Kristen Schumann joins us to answer one of your questions. Kristen, what do we have in the Max List mailbag this week?
Today's question comes from Stephen in Portland, Oregon.
My name is Stephen, and I live in Portland, Oregon. I've recently focused on applying for jobs for which I'm qualified fully for, because otherwise I don't get a response. However, in the interview process, I discern, or they even tell me, that I'm overqualified and move in a different direction. How do you suggest I navigate this conundrum?
My thoughts first off, or I'd want to know why Stephen is willing to consider a position for which he is overqualified. If the reason is that you want to get your foot in the door at a particular organization, for example, I would encourage you to emphasize your passion for and connection with that organization and their purpose. Many people would, for instance, eagerly welcome an opportunity to work at Mercy Corps here in Portland because they believe so strongly in the work they do, and there aren't that many opportunities to work at NGOs in Portland. The best thing you can do is to do your homework and show some knowledge of the organization. This is good advice for, of course, any approach that you take to an interview, but in particular in this case, to really make them understand that you're being strategic and you're invested in your career, not willing to flounder, and understand that sometimes you do have to backtrack at times to get where you want to go. Above all, you want to show your enthusiasm, and a good way to start this process is by just sitting down with a paper and pen and writing a list of the reasons you want to do the work there, and that'll give you some language to use in the interview. And a second thought is you might want to ask yourself if you're pushing yourself and not applying for jobs that might challenge you. So if this does keep happening to you, is this a pattern? And maybe it's the time to apply for that next level job.
I want to unpack this question a little bit here, because I think this is one of the misunderstood objections that employers have, and then that job seekers don't quite get where it comes from. I don't know any employer that out of hand just says no to someone who's overqualified because they don't want those qualifications. I mean, if you can do the job and do a bunch of other things, that's usually a selling point. The reason an employer might say no to you because you're overqualified is not because of the qualifications. It's because they're afraid you, A, might not be really interested in the job, or B, that you're only there for a short term and then you're going to go find something else that you really want to be doing. I mean, they're worried about flight, right?
Right.
And they don't want to make 2 hires in the course of 6 months.
Right.
So I think the challenge here is if this is really something you want to do, you need to get out in front of this person is overqualified objection, right? And you need to make it absolutely clear that you understand you might not be the conventional on-paper candidate they're looking for, but the reason you're applying for this job, even knowing that you're overqualified, is whatever that is. You're passionate about the organization. You want to try something different. You're making a strategic step back in your career so you can switch tracks, whatever that is, but you need to be passionate about it, and you need to really explain why this job.
Right. And your passion should really come through in the interview.
Yeah, I agree, because I think if you don't provide a reason, people will make one up. And that's a principle we follow in public relations. Information abhors a vacuum, so people will fill it. And when a hiring manager is sorting through resumes, they're looking for reasons to say yes to interviewing someone, but they're also looking for reasons to say no. And I think you both touched on this. A concern in a manager's mind might be, gosh, this person may need this job just for the paycheck, which is understandable, but they could be gone in a year or 2 years' time, or they'll be unhappy in the position. So providing that explanation, I think, will help you move to the front of the pack.
Right. And I think it will also give you a chance to answer that question for yourself. Do you want to work there, right?
Yeah, and I think you're touching on a really important point, because it's not clear why Stephen wants the job, and it's a short question and understandable, but I think leading with that is going to help him help the people who hear that explanation understand that this is something he wants. It's not something he's falling into.
Right. Good point.
And the real challenge here is to express all of this interest and desire and passion when you don't have a face-to-face meeting with the employer, right? It's a lot to pack into a cover letter when you're applying cold, which is why it helps so much if you have that pre-existing network in or around the employer with folks who can testify like, yeah, Stephen's a serious guy. Here's why he's doing this. It's not because he's just looking for a paycheck.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both, and thank you, Stephen, for that question. Let us know how it goes, and we also will be sending you a free copy of our new book, Land Your Dream Job Anywhere. If you have a question for us, please write our colleague Jessica Black. Her email is jessica@maxlist.org, or call our listener line. That number is area code 716 Talk. That's 716-562-8255. And if we use your question on the show, you too will get a copy of our new book, Land Your Dream Job Anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment. When we return, I'll talk with this week's guest, Alison Cardy, about how to manage the stress a job search can bring. Most people struggle with job hunting. The reason is simple. Most of us learn the nuts and bolts of looking for work by trial and error. That's why I produce this podcast, to help you master the skills you need to find a great job. It's also why I wrote my new book, Land Your Dream Job Anywhere. For 15 years at Max List, I've helped people in Portland, Oregon find meaningful, well-paying, and rewarding jobs that they love. Now, I put all of my job hunting secrets in one book that can help you no matter where you live. You'll learn how to get clear about your career goals, find hidden jobs that never get posted, and ace your next job interview. For more information and to download the first chapter for free, visit maxlist.org/anywhere. Now let's turn to this week's guest expert, Alison Cardy. Alison Cardy is the founder and CEO of Cardy Career Coaching. Her international team guides people through career changes. Alison's firm focuses on that crucial step before your job search begins, helping you figure out what it is you want to do with your life. She's also the author of Career Grease, How to Get Unstuck and Pivot Your Career. Alison joins us today from Arlington, Virginia. Alison, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Our topic this week is it's not so much fun. We're talking about stress during the job hunt. Alison, why are job searches so stressful?
Well, I think for a lot of people, it's kind of that emotional roller coaster of they want something, they get excited about a particular opportunity, and then there's that limbo period of, am I going to get it? And sometimes you do, which is great, and sometimes you don't. And then that's kind of the scary part of the roller coaster, the downturn. So I think that just the process is stressful. You're putting yourself out there probably in a bigger way than you normally do when you're just going into work. And the uncertainty adds a level of stress as well.
Now, how can stress affect your job search? What harm can it cause when you're looking for work?
Well, I think the biggest thing is it can really discourage you. So I had a client recently who was somebody who was very dedicated to their job search. We had clarified what they wanted, and they were feeling really disappointed that that opportunity hadn't come quite as quickly as they wanted. As I'm sure many people can relate, it doesn't always come as quickly as you want. And in this particular case, a big thing that was happening was that they were putting a deadline on something that they didn't really have complete control over. So they were saying, I want to have that new job by the end of the month. And of course, they would be working towards that goal. But then when the job didn't come at the end of the month, it made them feel like they had failed entirely. And, it made them question everything and really brought them to a pretty low and dark place. So in that particular instance, the issue was the framing of the goal. If you frame a goal around something that you don't have complete control over, you're kind of setting yourself up to be disappointed. Whereas if you frame the goal around something that you do have control over, which is your own actions, how many people do you talk to? How many jobs do you apply for? How much help do you get on your resume? When you actually set a goal around those, then you do have control over, I will send out 3 resumes by the end of the month or whatever it may be. Then you can feel successful along the way. But it's that kind of added stress of framing a goal poorly or, trying to control something that's not totally in your control that I think it really sends people in a kind of dark place. They feel lost and hopeless when that happens.
And I know people set those goals for all the right reasons, and they put in the effort to make those goals happen according to a deadline they want to achieve. But I think you're making an important point here, Alison, about what we should pay attention to, particularly in terms of control. For example, I'm sure this happens to you. I meet people who say, I'll ask how the job search is going, and they'll and they'll rattle off the number of resumes or applications they've mailed out that week. Why might that not be the best metric to measure your progress? You talked about paying attention to effort and things you can control. What kind of metrics should people pay attention to?
Well, I actually think that you want to pay attention to things that are going to help you be effective. So in some instances, the number of resumes that you send out can be helpful because that is something that you can control. But I guess to kind of add to that, you also want to think about, well, if I'm just sending out resumes and I'm not really getting a good response, then maybe I need to try a different strategy, or maybe I need to actually get my face in front of some people who would be in hiring positions for me. So I think sometimes people, particularly in the job search, they get kind of stuck behind a computer screen and doing things that feel productive, but actually may not be as valuable as things when you're out in the world connecting with people. Opportunities always flow through people. So the more that we can get people out into the world, connecting to people, getting their face and their friendly handshake in front of the right people, that's going to be more valuable. So in terms of things you can control, that's a first step. And certainly the number of resumes you send is something that you can control. So I'd say that's an okay metric. But then to take it a step further, let's look at what's going to be a more effective strategy and then put the metric around that.
Okay. So pay attention to the strategies and track the metrics that support them. Let's talk about expectations. I know that there's data out there that shows, according to the Labor Department, it can take up to 10 months to find your next job. Obviously it depends on where you are in your career and the goals you've set for yourself. How do you encourage people to set expectations, and how does that help them manage their stress?
Well, I think something that people can hopefully aspire to, it's a little easier said than done, would just be to stay in reality. So what I mean by that is oftentimes people, when they're job searching, they kind of balloon out nightmare scenarios like, well, I didn't get this interview, or I didn't get this job, therefore I'm not going to get anything, or, they kind of take it to an extreme. And if you think about it, that place where your brain is going is not actually reality. The only thing that may have happened is, one opportunity didn't work out. So we want to be careful about buying into these extreme interpretations of events. I was talking with a really qualified woman recently who had just gotten jobs naturally in the past, and this was the first time that she was job searching. And she said that she had talked with somebody in an interview and she didn't get the job. And she took it so to heart because that was kind of her first experience of that. And I just caution people, like, why are you going to let somebody's, 20-minute impression of you determine who you are? That's not true. You're so much more than whatever that impression is, or somebody's glance at your resume. Why are you going to let that determine who you are? Let's stay in reality. Let's pay attention to what's actually happened. Pay attention to who you really are and your capabilities. And I think that would help a lot.
I like your emphasis on staying in reality and being grounded and recognizing that you shouldn't let people's reactions based on just a short acquaintance control or shape your feelings for the long term. What are some other tips, Alison, for just managing the highs and lows of a job search?
This is probably something that your listeners have heard before, but I think it is a good idea to take care of yourself in the moment. So, of course, you're wanting to get a job, you're focused on it, you're doing all the right things. And if that's the only place you're putting your attention, you're going to lose perspective. Like you're going to really your brain will go in a funny place. So we want to make sure that you pick your head up every now and again. probably more often than you're doing, and pay attention to other aspects of your life, to your health, to your relationships. Get outside, putter around your house, make something better, whatever that you can do to just lift your head up and see a broader perspective and take care of whatever physical or emotional or mental needs that you have in the moment would be a really good idea to help people to stay centered and grounded.
I think that's great advice too. And I'm just, again, thinking about those highs and lows, particularly, we feel so good when we get that interview offer, but then when we get that rejection letter, it can really sting. How do you help your clients get through that process when they get their hopes up and then the offer doesn't come through?
Yeah, it's certainly tricky. And I think there's a place for, we want to be positive about, okay, this interview is coming up, let's be positive, let's be enthusiastic. And also I think it's a good idea to keep doing the job search actions, even while you are looking forward to one particular opportunity. So that way it's not, I have this one interview, everything is riding on it. If I don't get this job, that's it. So I think be positive about whatever opportunity and continue other job searching activities. And then if a job doesn't come through, then sure, take some time, mope around. Sometimes when we're in this process, you need to curl up into a ball a little bit, feel disappointed. That's understandable. So you can certainly give yourself some time for that. And then as you're able, try to get back into the game. Remember that it's just, you only need one. You only need one door to open for you. And it may take knocking on a couple before you get that right opportunity. So as I mentioned before, don't take it too personally that there's something wrong with you or anything like that. I mention that because I hear a lot of people who go to that place. And in many of the cases, in terms of people that my team and I see, they're actually wonderfully capable and excellent people, and they're making it, pretty far in the interviews. And the fact that they're getting that far is actually a sign that there's a whole lot right with you, not that there's something wrong with you. In many cases, it just takes knocking on a couple doors till you find the opportunity that's going to be the great fit for you.
And finally, Alison, are there things that you see people worry about that they probably should just let go, and perhaps they need permission to do so? I'm thinking, for example, sometimes, and I've certainly done this in my own career earlier, people get obsessed about their resume and sometimes can get stuck tweaking it endlessly. Are there other things like that people get stuck on that you might encourage them just to let go?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think the one that you called out, resume tweaking, and just to reiterate what I said before about anything that really keeps you behind a computer screen is a place that I would hesitate to tell people to spend too much time. And the work that my team and I do around helping people to figure out a good career fit, one of the things that we see in that realm is people spend a lot of time trying to find the answer by taking quizzes or reading. And the truth about job searching, about identifying a good career fit, is it's something that you have to learn your way through. And that implies you actually need to take action, and you need to get feedback and interact with people and new experiences to be able to get to that end result. So as an umbrella, I would just caution hanging out at home behind computer screens. I know many people are working while they're job searching, and going out and talking to somebody or going to an event is the last thing you want to do at the end of a day. But I really encourage as much as possible for people to prioritize those in-person types of things. I was talking with a LinkedIn expert, and you may have heard this idea before, Mac, and she said, the point of LinkedIn is to get off LinkedIn. Like the point of all these things is to actually meet people, build relationships. So I would watch out for those things that feel productive but keep you isolated. We want to get you out into the world. That's going to be more effective.
Good. Well, terrific. Well, thank you, Alison. Now tell us what's coming up next for you.
Well, the biggest thing on my radar screen is my book, Career Grease: How to Get Unstuck and Pivot Your Career. It's available on Amazon, and for anybody listening who is having trouble even figuring out which direction they should be job searching, or they're just not sure what type of job is going to make them happy, it has a lot of case studies and exercises to hopefully help you to find that good direction so then you can job search way more effectively.
We'll be sure to include a link to the book in the show notes. And I know people can learn more about you and your team and your work by visiting your website, which is cardycareercoaching.com. Alison, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Well, we're back in the Max List studio with Kristen and Ben. That was an enjoyable conversation with Alison, though, again, the topic was a hard one because we've all been through that when we've been looking for work and managing that stress. What were your thoughts, Kristen, as you listened to the interview?
Well, I liked how she touched on how the rejection of a job can mess with your confidence, right? And how she took it back to, but you got the interview, right? And there was a reason to keep up your confidence for that reason, and to not let 20 minutes with someone define you. I thought that was really a smart strategy because I think it is a time that can really mess with your confidence, and finding ways to keep your skills up and get out there. And her emphasis on networking, I also appreciated. I think I tell my clients that all the time. I think it's so important and people don't realize it. And you really need to get out there and to think of everything as networking is what I like to say. Everything going to a Super Bowl party is networking. It doesn't have to be this dry, boring event, right? It can be fun, and it should be fun.
How about you, Ben?
I liked one of her earliest points, which is about not holding yourself accountable to timelines that you can't control. And I think this is someplace and something a lot of people do. I know I've done it in the past, which is last time I was looking for work, I told my wife, I'm going to find a job in 4 weeks. And, 4 weeks roll around and I don't have any good leads, and you're just setting yourself up for failure. And the truth of the matter is you can't control the process and the speed at which it happens. You can do things to increase your chances of finding a job, but even if you find a great lead that's going to lead to a job, it's unlikely that you can dictate it's going to happen in 3 weeks, right? It takes a long time. And so just making sure you're focusing on accomplishments that you can control and that you have power over. And it's unfortunate that job searching is one of these things that at a certain point you have to let it come to you time-wise.
Yeah. And back to you, Kristen, I mean, the point about people I identified with a lot because we run a job board here at Max List. We have a blog, we have books, the podcast. A lot of this content is reaching people through their computers, but in the end, it's all just a means to an end, which is about building relationships with others and sharing your story with people at places you want to work or in fields you want to be. And it's those personal relationships that are going to get you the job. So I love her point about just stepping away from the computer and going out and talking to folks. Yeah. And that is something you can control. Right. And there's so much you can't during a job search.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you both. And thank you, Alison, for joining us this week. And to you, our listeners, for downloading today's episode of Find Your Dream Job. If you like what you hear, please sign up for our free weekly newsletter. In every issue, we give you the key points of that week's show. We also include links to all the resources mentioned, and you get a transcript of the full episode. If you subscribe to the newsletter now, we'll send you our job seeker checklist in one easy-to-use file. We show you all the steps you need to take to find a great job. Get your free newsletter and checklist today. Go to maxlist.org/podcast. And join us next Wednesday when our special guest will be Catherine Burke. She'll explain how to answer that standard job interview question, tell me about yourself. Until next time, thanks for letting us help you find your dream job.